Hello, welcome back to today's mobility session. Now, before we get started, I have to tell you that this is not going to be very easy. It's not going to be a walk in the park. However, stop, don't leave yet. Even though some of those exercises might be a challenge for you, we're gonna try to add as many regressions as possible so you can follow along and progress as we do. With today's focus being all about lower body mobility. That means we're gonna cover strength as well as endurance, as well as flexibility and coordination to take care of all the most important mobility aspects, and we'll do so in a very dynamic fashion. So if you're ready, we're gonna have some fun. Starting in a seated position, leaning back, we're going to go through 1990 switches, by far one of my favorite exercises. And the more mobility we start developing and the more we warm up, the further forward we will lean with our upper body. Go through the motions in a dynamic fashion, and as you progress, start pushing your legs further towards the ground and against the floor at the lowest point. We're now combining internal with external rotation in our hips and switching from one side to the other. And leaning forward the slightest bit at the end of the movement over time. Just one or two more repetitions per side. Like so. Like so, and with the final repetition, we're gonna add the tiniest bit of lumbar rotation to move us into our next exercise. Just loosening up our spine, because we're going to need all of that lower body mobility later. And if you've been here before, you definitely know that lower back mobility is intrinsically connected to hip mobility, and any sort of impediment there will hinder your progress when it comes to your leg mobility in general. So keep that in mind. Always work on your spine. Increasing our range of motion, we will now start moving lower with our upper body before we reverse into the next repetition. Just 2 times per side, because then we should be ready to get into the next exercise, and that's going to be a little bit more demanding. Final time on this side, and switching our starting position from a seated one into a deep squat resting position. Feet flat on the floor would be absolutely amazing. If you cannot, elevate your heels from now, and over time you will get there. Once again, combining internal rotation with complete ankle extension with external rotation on one side, adding spinal or lumbar rotation at the very least, and reversing, now requiring a lot of strength in our hip flexors, quad, and of course in our tibialis to get us back into a deep squat position before we switch directions. Going lower, reversing the movement, and with each repetition going the tiniest bit closer to the floor. Now, your range of motion will be different to everyone else's, so please be careful. Some discomfort is of course warranted. Having pain in any of your joints is definitely not. So dial it back a little bit if you're feeling pain within your joints. Now we're almost all the way down to the floor for the last 2 repetitions. One more to the right. We're adding some speed for explosivity and a little bit more strength requirements as well, but that is totally up to you. You can slow it down and take as much time as you want with each one of those repetitions. Moving directly into our next exercise, rocking into a bear crawl position before we get back into our deep squat. And we're gonna add some posterior chain extension with every single repetition, increasing our range of motion. So extend your legs a little bit further, move forward, bring your shoulders further and further above your fingertips, reverse and extend once more. 1 or 2 more repetitions and we will be in full extension. There you go. Once, put all that pressure on your hands, reverse, and we are in one full extension. Now, you will notice that the further you extend your legs, the less extension you will have in your back, so be sure to start moving into spinal extension as well to add even more stretch to our posterior chain and even more strength to our spinal erectors or our lumbar spinal musculature. One more time forward. And final time, we're going to slow this down, go inch by inch, push our shoulders forward as much as we can until our hands start raising and reversing into our final extension. From this point, moving forward with our shoulders once more and back into our starting position. And now adding a little bit more hip work, a little bit more oblique work, we're going to add some lower body rotation while keeping our upper body just as we did before. Move your shoulders forward above your fingertips and start turning into one side as far as you can, adding as much engagement to our obliques and our spinal musculature to get that rotation, adding the tiniest bit of glute inclusion as well before we reverse and repeat into the other direction as far as it goes, just like so. And trust me, your core is going to absolutely thank you for that work. Maybe not instantly, because you will feel it tomorrow, but over time, all of those rotational movements are very important for core stabilization and pretty much with every single other fitness aspect, especially if you're someone who does calisthenics, which includes a lot of full body movements and compound style exercises that require massive amounts of engagement and control from our core musculature. Final time, into one direction, reverse, and one final time into the other direction, reverse. And now we are sufficiently warmed up for one of my favorite torture methods. In this very low squatting position, it requires a lot of strength from your core, your hip flexors and your quads to go into this extension with your leg. Most importantly, when raising your foot. In this very position, those 1 or 2 centimeters of movement require massive amounts of strength and control. So we're going to slow this down to feel the burn even more, and we're going to start increasing our range of motion for our upper body by lowering towards the floor, adding a little bit of triceps and shoulder musculature. Just as a small bonus, you're absolutely welcome. And slowly, carefully, closer with your upper body, adding a pseudo one-sided dip, basically, and massive amounts of core engagement. And I forgot, you please don't. Keep that leg fully extended, those quads fully flexed, and those toes pointed, so we can start strengthening our posterior chain and our lower musculature as well, and start developing the necessary control for our ankles to go into complete extension. There you go. One more time. One more time to the other side, so we can start switching it up for even more benefits. Because this next variation adds a ton of posterior chain flexibility to all of the benefits we had with the last exercise, the hip flexor strength, the quad strength, the immense amount of core engagement we get, and extending behind one leg, we now have our hamstrings and our calves also stretched, especially with the next couple of repetitions, increasing our range of motion and starting to move with our hand towards our toes, just like so. And switching to the other direction. Grab forward as far as you can, hold those toes, reverse, and now adding even more chest, shoulder, and arm strength as a tiny bonus, lower down to the ground, reverse. We only got 2 or 3 more repetitions, don't worry about it. I know this is getting really exhausted, I can feel it myself, but we're almost there. Come on, one more time. To the right, final time to the left before we switch up to the next exercise. Here we go. And we've added all of this posterior chain stretch to prep us for the next exercise, moving into a pike position or a forward fold. Keep your neck fully relaxed and your head hanging loose to decompress your neck as well. And at the lowest point, we're going to pull our arms in, push our legs backwards, open up to lengthen our adductors and open up our hips even more, and then directly move back into this extension for our posterior chain. Back into a deep squat, pushing backwards. Now we're adding a metric shit ton of quad engagement as well. And even if your range of motion is not that of a full pike or forward fold, don't worry about it. If this is the end of your range of motion, that is absolutely amazing. The fact that you are working on it is all that matters. We only have 2 more repetitions before we go into the next phase of this exercise. So slow this last repetition down, back into a deep squat, opening up. Final time, extension as slowly as possible, inch by inch, holding the top for 2, 1, reversing, pulling our shoulders in, and now this is where it gets interesting. We're going to open up, place our fingertips on the floor, and extend out of this position, requiring a ton of quad strength, hip flexor strength, and posterior chain flexibility as far as you can without your fingertips leaving the floor. So if this is the end of your range of motion, once again, amazing. Don't worry about it. We will get better, especially if you do this workout a couple of times by yourself. Extend, reverse, pull your shoulders in, press your legs backward, and final time, holding for 3, 2, 1, back into our deep squat again. Of course, you won't be surprised that we use the last exercise to prep us for this upcoming one. We're gonna switch our starting position for the very first time and flatten our feet in a horse stance. Keep your upper body fully upright. We have a lot of core engagement, but most importantly, quad engagement, which is going to get exponentially harder. Turn inward with internal rotation, both feet forward. Do not touch down with your knee. Reverse into the complete horse stance first, meaning upper body fully upright before we move into the rotation into the other direction. Now, as a bonus, if you want to, you can start pushing your hips forward, lengthening our quads and our hip flexors for maximum anterior chain stretch in this somewhat more strength dominant exercise. Reverse and repeat into the other direction. Do not, I repeat, do not touch down with your knee, because we want to build as much pressure and as much engagement in our quads as we can. We only have a couple of repetitions. Push forward, reverse, push forward, reverse. One more time for the left side, one more time to the right side, and now we're gonna have even more fun with our quads, opening up even wider, going into my favorite leg exercise, starting with feet parallel into a Cossack squat, hip joint to knee height if possible. If not, just work on it as long as your feet are parallel, because we're putting most of the focus in the flexibility part on our adductors, with most of the focus in the strength part on our quads by extending upwards all the way before we lower down into the other side. And now we're going to switch that adductor stretch to a posterior chain stretch by adding external rotation in the extended leg. Now moving down all the way, and very important, we are actively raising our heels to add as much strength inclusion for our toes and our foot musculature as well, and always moving up all the way before we move down. All the way, stay as upright in your upper body as possible. If you need the support, you can do this one until you develop the necessary strength and control to move up all the way and down all the way. One more time per side. All the way down to the left, all the way down to the right, because the next repetition is going to make this so much more fun. Because we've already made it to our finisher exercise, we're only going to do a handful of repetitions, and trust me, you're only going to need a handful. Lowering down onto this Cossack squat, we're going to use the hand at the same side as the extended leg, place our hand like half a meter behind our knee, and from here start pushing our hips upward by flexing our posterior chain and lengthening our anterior chain all the way to our fingertips, holding the top with as much engagement in our posterior chain as possible before we move forward, using our core strength in our hips and our quads to go up all the way, down all the way, and move this into the other direction. Now we want to stay as dynamic as possible, adding as much strength as possible from our core and our quads by going through the longest range of motion we can go through. The amount of glute, hamstring, and lumbar spinal musculature inclusion is absolutely insane. And the stretch for our anterior chain is also absolutely insane, feels amazing, and will require, however, a lot of strength, a lot of coordination, which is exactly why we're here. One more time to the left, because this exercise has one more level, and then we're almost done. Because to make this an even more amazing exercise, now we're going to place, instead of our hand behind our extended leg, no, we're going to go lower by placing our lower arm on the floor and pushing up from here, requiring even more strength, adding even more flexibility, requiring even more coordination. And now to get back into the standing position, we need a lot of strength from our core, hip flexors and quads before we move into the other side. Lengthen, flex your posterior chain, extend your anterior chain, and keep repeating in as dynamic a fashion as possible. If you have some cramping, if you have some pain, just take a break, but We are almost done anyway. Only 2 more repetitions. All the way up, all the way down on the left side, all the way up, all the way down on the right side. And now going to move into a somewhat relaxed forward fold, relaxing our upper body into this hanging position and just swaying left and right for a handful of seconds, taking a couple of deep breaths and slowly bringing our pulse back down to an acceptable rate. It is now at 120, which is a little bit high. That's exactly why we have this relaxation part of 15 seconds, which is more than enough for anyone to recover from this workout. And there you have it. I hope I didn't overpromise or underdeliver. This workout should help you build a lot of strength, a lot of flexibility, a lot of coordination, and a lot of endurance for your legs and overall the lower body in general. And if you can add a nice hanging exercise at the very end of your workout, that would be an even more amazing bonus. And of course, if you like the video, and come on, subscribe. We do stuff like that pretty often, which means that I'll see you very, very soon. So until then, have a good one. Captain Cairo, peace out.